The NBA season is right around the corner, so today on the Blazers Are Cool show, Brad and I are going to begin prepping for the season by previewing every one of the Blazers rostered players, except for Damian Lillard, since he won't be playing this year. Starting today with Sidy Cissoko, Caleb Love, and Blake Wesley. We'll share what we think the best case scenario is for each player, the worst case scenario, and then what we think is actually going to happen. And at the end of the series, we should have a pretty good feel for what this team could and will look like this year. So hit a subscribe if you end up enjoying this video. Hit a like if you're excited for the Blazers season to begin. And let's talk about Sidy, Caleb, and Blake. Brad, the season is approaching very fast, and I think
it's 12 days away?
12 days away from the preseason, something like that. I think it's officially time to start previewing the season, and I think we've decided that how we're going to do that is we're going to go player by player and basically break down the best case scenario for each player this season, the worst case scenario for each player this season, and then predict it's probably somewhere in the middle of that of what's actually going to happen. Let's start with the two-way players.
Yeah.
I think our first one is Sidy Cissoko. The athletic wing, young. He showed potential. Him and Scoot played together in the G League, I think. And, Pooh Jeter, is that Pooh Jeter? Yeah. Who was coaching them too, so I'm sure that had a little something to do with it.
Sure.
Of the familiarity there, but he played in summer league. I thought he had some great plays. I thought he was playing off of Young pretty well.
Sure.
Like good cutter.
Sure.
He had a couple jumpers, but I think it was hit or miss. I think he had one really good game, one not so good game. He got a little bit of run with us at the end of the season, but not a ton.
I mean, he got 5 games in, played 12 minutes. Like you said, had 2 games where he played 25 plus minutes. He got some real run in against like kind of the ideal situation where you want with a guy like that, where it's like he played against some end of the year, slightly depleted teams. And so he could kind of showcase what he could potentially bring to the team.
Yeah. And what I'm noting from those box scores is what sticks out. I mean, they're small box scores, but 5 assists and 4 assists is kind of promising. From a wing like that who's only getting so much run, probably playing alongside people who aren't scoring all that well. So I think that shows a little bit of promise in that regard as kind of a facilitator.
Yeah, when I was at that Warriors game though, like it was almost weird watching him play because he stood out so much as someone who actually tried to move the ball. Because if I remember correctly, that Warriors game, we started none of our playmakers we started Banton, Thibault, Klingon, Chris, and Tumani. So it was like a 0 shooting, 0 playmaking team where, Banton went 1 of 12.
Literally, they put 4 defenders out there with Banton and said, this is your last, hurrah.
This is your last chance. Yeah, 1 of 12 with 7 turnovers and 6 assists. It was brutal. And Sissoko, he stood out in the way that he was obviously trying to move the ball.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where, compare play style to what the actual results were. Because I remember at the time I got in some arguments online on a Reddit about him because a lot of guys were pretty excited about how he played. And I understood why, because in a lineup where there was 0 playmakers, I think one guy making even one nice pass stood out as like this revelation.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was like, oh my God, someone's actually moving the ball. But he also had 6 turnovers. The 5 assists were nice, but it was a really rough watch.
Yeah.
And like I said, he stood out because he was trying to move the ball. This kind of I felt about all the games he played with us, where it's like, oh, cool. Like you see any point forward, that style of play stands out, but he finished with more turnovers than assists. He didn't make a single 3 all the games he played. He looked like a guy who was willing to make passes as a forward, which is always nice to see, but didn't actually, make any real impact with that. He couldn't shoot.
Yeah.
I'm happy we brought him back because, I mean, like any big guard / forward who is willing to try to be a playmaker is definitely something to always give it a chance to.
Yeah.
So it's a cool guy to have as a 15th spot on the roster, but
yeah. To me, I think the best case for him is probably cracks into the bottom of the rotation and shows flashes in games where up by a lot, and I guess really starts to prove like he can kind of maybe garner like another contract later. I think
Mhm.
it's just slow growth, I guess is what I would say.
I
Maybe
mean, he's
that's
21, dude.
he's
I mean,
21.
anytime you see a big guard like that or a forward who moves the ball like that and he's 21, it's like you understand why people might be excited about it. Like you said, I kind of agree with you on best case scenario. Best case scenario, he's a guy that like we throw in and when our playmaking is either, in blowouts we can put in and he's a fun watch, or he's a guy, really best case scenario that we could on a team that is probably going to be lacking playmakers.
Yeah.
Like maybe he's the kind of guy who we throw in, all of a sudden it's like, oh, we have some more ball movement while surrounding him with more defensive players and hopefully a couple shooters. Worst case scenario, he's a high passing, high turnover, 6'6" forward who can't make a three, and he doesn't get any minutes, and he's out of the league by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Which could happen, and that's fine. That's why we have these two-way guys, because he has a nice upside, a guy who could rejuvenate the offense at times. Realistically, I think he's going to be a guy who, when we throw in at the end of games, like his size and defense and willingness to pass is just enough to keep him on the team.
I would say for me, his outcome is probably like G League stud. Like, I think he kind of gets increased minutes in the G League and becomes like, I don't know about a G League all-star per se, but maybe one of our best G League players, running it with McGowan's and stuff like that. I think he gets a lot of minutes there. And then, say in a world where our season falls off by the end, which, we don't think it will be.
No, I'm feeling good about it.
But in a situation like that, he maybe comes in at the end of the year and then proves himself a little bit and kind of builds a little bit momentum. I could see that happening. I don't think he'll get that opportunity if we're playing well again, but I think a really good G League year is well in his cards, and I think that's what I see for Sidy.
Sure.
And then next up, the other two-way player, the rookie two-way player, we have Caleb Love, who has not played an NBA game yet, but had a lot of run in Summer League. And, I mean, I've watched Caleb Love play more than a lot of the guys on the Blazers. I was a Caleb Love enthusiast at North Carolina, especially during that tournament run they had where they went to the finals. I have since turned. I was a very staunch Caleb Love hater during last year, particularly this last season. He was chucking shots. He was not efficient. He would sometimes kind of win you games and then shoot you out of way more games. It is a very classic archetype that is really hard to make work in the NBA. Now that he's on the team, I'm going to probably flip that entire narrative that I ran through and be like, look, if he gets hot for a week or two, he could really become something. He does play good defense. He plays hard.
He plays hard.
I don't know if he necessarily plays smart, but he knows the game well. All that being said, I would say the best case for Caleb Love is pretty high compared to, I think, a lot of like undrafted rookies who are on two-way contracts. We're going to know pretty fast if he's going to sink or swim, because I think either all of his experience is going to shine through and he's going to be ready right now, or if he's not ready now, then there's not really a lot of room in my head for him to think he's going to grow into a good NBA player, because his habits are already set in stone. The type of player he is pretty polarizing, and if it shows pretty quickly that it's, in the wrong direction, I think it'll be tough to see. But again, best case scenario, I think Caleb Love works his way into the not into the rotation quite, but we need a spark. I trust Caleb Love enough. Go in there, start hucking, see what you can do type role. And he earns that maybe like 20, 30 games into the season after a lot of hard work and good decision making in practice and in games when he's given opportunities. So I'll say, in short, an offensive spark is probably best case scenario for Caleb Love.
What's so funny about Caleb Love is I think from the Summer League, I think he was clearly the second most fun player to watch. He was awesome. He was so much fun, but he was awesome in the most purely Summer League way possible. You know what I mean? Where it's like, you'd watch like, oh, this guy's electric. He's an electric player to watch, which he always has been. I was like, this guy is so much fun, so entertaining, like brings so much energy and effort to the game. And then you look and it's like, oh, he's 2 of 14, 0 of 7 from 3, and has 6 turnovers. And you're like, wait, what? Like it feels like when you watch him, like he's the second most impactful player on the court next to Handsome. And that's the thing. What I like about Caleb is he's the kind of guy who you would think would be like completely zero effort on defense, because that's how he plays offensively. He's weirdly as much of a hucker on defense as he is on offense. Like you rarely see, which I think is a hilarious archetype of a player. Because you usually see guys like Caleb Love, you think like the Rob Dillingham type of mold. You know, the like dribble heavy, takes any shots he likes, plays like it's like a pickup game kind of offense. And with those guys, usually they like don't try it all on defense. And like you said, I don't know if he's actually a good defender, especially in the NBA. He's most likely going to be not good, especially at first, because he basically hucks on defense. Like he goes after every ball, every passing lane, whether it's a good idea or not. He completely overplays everything. And in the G League, it was a blast. Like this is a guy who was like diving and like going nuts, and it was so much fun to watch. The concern about him though is like he plays like someone who's 18 and still learning how to play winning basketball, but he's 23 and played 5 seasons in college. I think best case scenario, he's the most fun guy in garbage minutes.
Yeah.
And I think also that's realistically what he's going to be too. I'm not really a big believer in Caleb Love just because he's never shown he can be a shooter. He can show he shoots, but he's never, which is awesome. I think he's going to be the most entertaining and fun garbage time guy. Worst case scenario, he completely overplays everything defensively. He gets in like immediate reach in foul trouble, can't shoot, and is someone who you never expect to play any serious minutes. But you watch him, he's like, God, for a guy who plays that hard, like you just kind of, if you just, it's one of those guys where it's like, if he just gets the 3-point shooting down, he's a guy who could get some minutes on some NBA teams.
Yeah.
Just because of how hard he plays.
Well, that's what I'm saying is like, he's so streaky that he could start his first 4 weeks of NBA, practice and G League gameplay and whatever, and like be on fire and be like ascend honestly to the back end of the rotation just by going hot. He also, and for me, his worst case is he goes incredibly cold for his first 4 weeks and it goes to his head and he, maybe divas out a little bit and like, they don't even want him on the G League, and then he kind of immediately gets cut by the team because if he's going to shoot 25% from 3, he's not worth probably the headaches that he's, going to become, which is not playing winning basketball and taking shots from other people on a G League team who are, I mean, if he's taking shots from Bryce McGowan's, I don't think Bryce McGowan's is going to be very happy with him when he goes 1 for 12, right?
Exactly.
With 4 turnovers. So I genuinely think it'll be like kind of playing slots for him where like he could either hit the jackpot and just start bombing in threes and then everyone will get hype on Caleb Love. They'll be like, why did we let Caleb Love fall, or it just completely bottoms out and they're like, oh, we knew Caleb Love sucked. He was never going to make it. He's washed up. So I think his range of outcomes is pretty big. I agree with you. I think it'll like the realistic outcome is fun, exciting guy to come in off the bench at the end of games for a handful of games, and then it'll be time between the G League and riding with a team. So
the next up, Blake Wesley,
an actual contracted player,
not
which a two-way.
Kind of surprises me.
Yeah, I mean that was a very targeted move by Cronin. He was traded from the Spurs to the Wizards this offseason.
Yeah,
and then he agreed to a buyout, which meant that just isolating it to the Wizards, he was going to make less money, which means that like isolated to the Wizards, if accepting that buyout means he can go sign another contract, but he's going to make less money. And that's only really a move you would do as Blake Wesley if you knew you were going to get another contract somewhere else that was going to make you more money. Because when you're a player like him who's fighting for any contracts, you're not going to take a buyout and take $1 million less unless you know that the Portland Trailblazers are about to sign you. So they went out with the intention to go get Blake Wesley to fill this 15th spot. It makes sense because I think one last guard was the position of most of need. He fits the defensive mold. It seems like he's much better on the defensive side of the ball so far in his career.
Of the 3 guys, he's the one I'm least excited about. I think he's kind of a similar mold to Caleb Love, where they're both kind of like the I said the Rob Dillingham architect. I think it's more like the Bones Highland archetype. I say architect, which is a tough player to be. And like you said, similar with Caleb Love. He's a guy who tries on defense, Blake Wesley, which is nice, but he was never able to really shoot in college at Notre Dame. Shot 32% there. He's shooting like a little bit worse than that in the NBA. Undersized guard. He's a good ball handler, but not really like a standout playmaker. He had some good games. He had 15 points on 5 of 6 and 3 shooting against Denver last season. A couple other double-digit scoring games. Shows effort defensively. I'm surprised he's the guy who got a full, was actually a contracted player. Because when I watch him, I think, I like how he's like a slithery player, which I'm always a fan of. I like any guard who's slithery.
Good adjective.
Great ball handler. He's got a good wingspan, which I like. Is he good enough at everything else to be a guy who gets real minutes? Like I would assume not, just because of how inconsistent of a shooter he is. And I know it's kind of like I was just talking kind of highly about Caleb Love, and it might seem kind of hypocritical to say like I'm not huge into Blake Wesley. But yeah, he's a guy who I think best case scenario could have a similar outcome where it's like he figures out the shooting a little bit and is a guy when guys get hurt or in garbage time, like can come in and play some high energy defense, maybe get hot from three. He's an entertaining ball handler and could be just a fun bench guy. I think realistically, I don't really know what to make of him yet.
Yeah.
And I've watched him play, but realistically, he's a guy who I think that will probably not show that he's gonna get another contract. And I don't mean to sound negative, but he's too small for his defense to matter unless he's really, really good. I've always kind of said that point guard defense is a little bit overrated unless you're like Drew Holiday elite. I think realistically, he at best shows that he can get another two-way contract and another team next year. And worst case, kind of the same with all three of these guys. He shows he's just not really, because of his archetype of being he's not quite a gunner type of player, but like a high energy shooting 6'3" guard. Just can't really find a fit in the NBA, I think is the worst case scenario.
Yeah. It's hard for me to see a world where he can offensively hang on the court. Point guard Chris Murray is maybe like best case scenario for him.
Sure.
Which is just kind of, it's tough because it's just like point guard Chris Murray can never be better than Chris Murray because wing Chris Murray is much more valuable than point guard Chris Murray.
That's
you know what
exactly
I mean?
Right.
So he can be a really good on-ball defender or just a really good defender in general. But like you said, that 6'3", without the offensive bag really at all to carry around. It's basically just kind of like a energy specialist at a position that we don't really need, especially when we have Drew Holiday and you're hoping Scoot Henderson comes around on that. So like, I don't know, maybe just super niche matchup based and he's trustworthy with the ball. I could trust him being in there. I just don't think he's adding a lot. I think that's kind of the best case scenario. And then I agree with you. Like, the worst case is just nothing comes together and he kind of just sputters out. Well, that's Blake Wesley, Sidy Cissoko, and Caleb Love. We are, again, rooting on all these guys all together and hope all their best case scenarios hit. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
On the next video, we'll come out with you guys with Ryan Rupert and Chris Murray. Two lanky, defensive-oriented, sort of with Rupert, wings, who are kind of in make or break years in their own regard. There might only be room for one of them. Maybe a little dog eat dog situation we got going on. We'll preview the both of them. But if you've watched this far, hit a subscribe for us. Hit a like if you are excited for these previews and excited for the season coming up. And we'll talk to you guys next time.